Thank you. Thank you and welcome everyone to Policy and Resources Committee today. Can I remind you all, members and attendees, to turn off your cameras and microphones until asked to speak. This meeting will be webcast and a record retained on the council website. For those at home viewing the webcast, I will inform you that if you look above the video, you will see a resources tab. Select this and add a link to the agenda, and a link to the agenda will appear in the right-hand side. This will allow you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and debate. Apologies tonight. Councillor Chris Briggs sent her apologies and Councillor Brian Kenny is acting as a deputy. Councillor Tom Musher sent his apologies and Councillor Jean Robinson is acting as his deputy. Vicky Shaw, could you now do a roll call, please, of all members in attendance?
Yes, I can. Councillor Anderson.
Good evening, Tom Anderson present.
Councillor Carubia.
Good evening, Councillor Chris Carubia present, thank you.
Councillor Cleary.
Yes, good evening, Pat Cleary present, thank you.
Councillor Clements.
Good evening, Councillor Wendy Clements present.
Councillor Gilchrist.
Yes, good evening, Councillor Phil Gilchrist present, thank you.
Councillor Green.
There we go. Good evening, Councillor Jeff Green present.
Councillor Gray.
Evening, Councillor Gray present.
Councillor Hodson.
Good evening, Councillor Andrew Hodson present.
Councillor Kenny.
Good afternoon, Councillor Brian Kenny present, thank you.
Councillor Leech.
Good afternoon, Councillor Leech present.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Good afternoon, Councillor Moira McLaughlin present.
Councillor McManus. Councillor McManus. I'll come back to Councillor McManus. Councillor Nolan.
Good evening, Councillor Nolan present.
Councillor Rennie.
Councillor Lesley Rennie present.
Councillor Robinson.
Councillor Jean Robinson present.
Councillor Stuart.
Councillor Paul Stuart present.
I'll just go back, Chair, and see if Councillor McManus is present yet. Councillor McManus, can you hear us? No, I don't think we have Councillor McManus, Chair, but I think everybody else is present. Is there any members whose names I missed? No, so I think it's just Councillor McManus who's not with us. We'll see if we can get her into the meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. Could I ask members whether they have any disclosable pecuniary interests and or any relevant interests in connection with any items on this agenda? If they do so, can they declare them now, please? Take that as no. Thank you. So minutes of the last meeting, I'm going to ask members to approve the minutes of the last P&R committee that was held on the 11th of November 2020. I think, Vicky, you're going to come in, there's a slight inaccuracy in them. Could you confirm that, please?
Chair, if I could just clarify and suggest a small correction to the minutes. The second paragraph of draft minute 20, which is entitled Establishment of a Local Plan Working Group, which is on page 4 of the agenda pack, states at the final sentence of that paragraph, this was on the understanding that the membership of the working group would mirror that of the local plan steering subcommittee. And I think if I could just suggest that to clarify matters, we should add to the end of that sentence the words in also being made up of one member from each of the council's political groups, which I think accords with the introduction I gave to that item at the meeting when the minutes were recorded.
Thanks for that clarification. I'm happy to move the minutes. Have I got a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second those, Janette, with the amendment.
Thank you. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so our next agenda item is public and member questions. I believe we have a public question from Louise Stothard. I would like to invite Louise to ask her question of me as chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think Bryn just needs to invite Louise into the meeting. There she is. We'll hand over to you now.
Cheers. Hi, Louise. Would you like to ask your question? You're on mute. I think you're on mute. Do you want to just check? Okay, do you want to have another go? Because I couldn't hear you before. No, we're having trouble.
Is it possible for someone to give her a call and work her through the system? It's almost as though Louise can't hear us either.
Bryn, are you able to pause the meeting and call Louise just to see whether she can get her IT working properly? Okay. Glad you've sorted your IT out, Louise. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes. I'd like to start by just asking a simple question, which is when will Wirral Council stop felling? We've lost over 6,000 trees. Yes.
Okay. Have you finished your question? Is that okay? All right, thank you very much for that, Louise. What I intend to do is refer this on to the appropriate committee, which is the Environment, Climate Emergency and Transport Committee, for when it next meets. They can provide a much more detailed response to you. Okay. Would you like a supplementary one on that, Louise?
What was the question? Yeah. I just finished off.
Yeah, we're just having some IT problems. Sorry if I cut into you there. I thought you'd finished asking your question. It's obviously your IT is freezing tonight, so it looked like you'd finished your question.
If you can hear me, I'll just finish that one off.
Yeah, sure, we can hear you now.
Okie doke. And it's I'd like to ask that a Zoom meeting be called working group. Okay, all right.
Okay. Are you all right now? Have you asked everything you need to ask? Yeah. Okay. So I did respond prematurely because I hadn't realised you hadn't finished. So I do apologise for that. So this is going to be referred to the relevant committee, and I think that a meeting has or will be set up for you, the working group that you referred to there. It's going to. So we've got. Sorry. Okay, so Bryn, we're clearly having some IT problems there. Or Steve, can you make sure that I've actually had the question in full before we move on to the next agenda item? Because I'm aware very much that Louise's IT is not being very good today.
Yes, Chair. For members' information, I think if you're agreeable, and the suggestion that you've made, Chair, is it will be referred to for consideration to the Environment, Climate Emergency and Transport Committee on the 1st of February, and we'll write to Louise confirming that after the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Louise. I hope that's helpful.
Chair, can I just refer back to that, please?
I'm just going to bring you in then, Liz.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy for Louise to come to a working group or a workshop of the Environment Committee, as soon as possible, because I believe the question referred to a workshop or working group. I think that's what you were saying, but I couldn't hear. My audio wasn't picking that question up very clearly, but I think that's what you were saying. So I'm quite happy for that, if that's okay with everybody. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks very much. All right, Louise, thanks for bringing the question to us, and I hope the response is helpful to you. All right, everyone, thank you. Could I ask members whether anyone has a petition they'd like to present tonight? No. Okay.
Chair, Louise is still in the meeting.
Okay. Is that sorted, Steve?
Yes, Chair, no problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does any member have any petitions they have to present tonight? No. Okay, take that as a no. Or are there? We haven't received any questions from members either. So, okay, so we will move on now to it's a one-item agenda tonight. And it is, I'm just going to move on to that one. Just bear with me. My own IT is not being very helpful tonight either. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for your attendance. As you know, 2020 has brought some really big challenges and unprecedented times for Wirral Council, as well as every other local authority up and down the country, particularly on the financial front. So in response to the pandemic, the government's provided local authorities with cash injections to ensure there was a sufficient local response to the pandemic. And so we've procured PPE, we've been able to support the most vulnerable, and we've had a magnificent humanitarian effort. We haven't quite had our loss of income fully remunerated, so we've had up to 75% reimbursed from government around our loss of income. That has added to our budget pressures. So we've had a real impact on our service delivery and our financial position, such as the ability to generate income, for example, from our leisure centres. And as I said, we haven't been fully reimbursed for that. All in all, a very challenging picture. There's still areas that the council continue to present financial pressures outside of COVID that we must address and form part of the consultation as per our report that we're going to talk through tonight. And these are £10 million worth of proposals that are contained within that report. And at this point, I'd just like to thank everyone, not only for your continued attendance, but the fact that every member here tonight and their respective groups have fully participated in this process. We are at a point, sorry, I believe my camera's not on, let me just turn it on. There we go, I do apologise. As we were saying, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation. As we all know, we entered a new committee system in September, which allowed for cross-party working, and I think that from my perspective as chair, that the P&R committee has worked really well, and I do know that other committees have also worked equally as well. For me, it's really important that we continue on this theme. The financial challenges faced by us on Wirral are of such importance that there's no room for petty politicking at the minute. So I would like to thank everyone for that. We've got two separate parts really to our budget, and it's only the start of the budget setting process. By no means at the end, it is the very beginning, We're just going out to consult currently, but we have all worked together and reached an agreement on the options that we are taking to our residents and our stakeholders to consult on. And that is the £10 million of savings that was agreed by all of the members within this committee over the past few weeks. Not easy meetings, but I have to say they were professional, they were courteous, and we did reach a consensus in those meetings. So that's the £10 million worth of savings outside of COVID. We're also asking the government for a capitalisation directive. And in simple terms, we're asking the government to allow us to borrow money to offset the COVID-related pressures. And that is part of our budget setting process also. I'm going to allow Cher to speak to her report in a minute. I'd just like to say the capitalisation directive, whilst it's not ideal and it's not something I ever thought I would say was a preferred option, it's all relative now, isn't it? And it is the preferred option for us, given the situation that we're in. So we have gone from a balanced budget in March, a balanced no-cuts budget in March, to a position which is significantly more challenging. Our aspiration is that we are allowed to capitalise the budget deficit, and in doing so we will protect our communities who have been hit the hardest with austerity and with COVID. It'll allow us to protect them. And so I'm going to bring Cher in now to speak to her report, and then we can widen out the debate for questions and comments after Cher's spoken. So thank you all.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to highlight really some of the key areas of the report that I think will be pertinent to the committee. The report, as you mentioned, is part of the Council's formal budget process, as set out in the Constitution in accordance with the legal requirements to set a balanced and a sustainable budget for 21-22. I have reported in previous reports to the committee that the Council has applied for government support via a capitalisation directive, as you mentioned, to offset the COVID-related pressures. And I think you have stated in your introduction there that this report actually relates to the savings that need to be made to offset the non-COVID pressures of 16.5 million next year in 21-22. So every year the Council has between 15 and 20 million pressures that have to be mitigated in the form of savings, and this is things like levies, waste and emergency travel levy, contract inflation, pay and pensions increases, borrowing costs to fund the capital programme, and also demographic growth. And this report is concerned with the savings to actually relate to offset those pressures for next year. So I just wanted to highlight, as I say, some key areas in the report really to draw the committee's attention to. So paragraph 3.6 at table 1 actually highlights the budget gap there of 16.5 million. This is a draft budget gap, so it isn't set as yet because it is subject to change. We have received information from the spending review that I'll talk about in a minute, and this will impact on the budget gap. And also we haven't yet set some of the pressures that I talked about before. So the levies have not been set, we've not received those, and we are doing a current review of our pressures at the moment. So that may well also impact on the total of the budget gap. So it is draft for the time being. Paragraphs 3.7 and onwards there just highlight some of the demand pressures that I've just been talking about and that you referred to in your opening statement as well, Chair. And these are on adult social care, children's social care, children and families, and some of the levies that I've just referred to. And those paragraphs up to 3.11 just provides a bit more information on that. Just in terms of the capitalisation directive at 3.12, this provides the information that you mentioned and I alluded to as well, and it just provides some information that's already been included in the reports that went to committee in October and November, but it's just a reminder to the public and to members about what the original capitalisation directive was for, that it could only be for our COVID pressures, and that there were 3 specific conditions associated with that directive, and they're highlighted in 3.13. I just touched on before the information from the spending review, and this is in paragraph 3.17 and onwards. And then a bit later on, in terms of, it just refers to the impact of the spending review nationally, and then paragraphs 320 onwards impact on the assumptions of the spending review that relate to Wirral. We have received our draft funding settlement yesterday, and this is open for consultation in terms of what that funding settlement has given us. It is an estimate, as I say, it is a draft, and the consultation will run for 4 weeks to the 16th of January. So we won't know until the consultation's finished and we receive final settlement from government what actually the impact of the spending review will be on our budget for next year. And this is why I mentioned before that our budget gap is in draft. And we won't know potentially till the end of January as to what our funding settlement is final for 21-22, and this may well change the position when we actually receive that. So paragraph 3.27 was just something that you alluded to in your introduction, Chair, about the process, that the pathway that's happened in terms of the budget proposals. So all the proposals, as you state, have been through the individual relevant committees, and then there has been 2 meetings, 2 workshops, should I say, of the Policy and Resources Committee to identify the feedback from the workshops from those individual committees. And this has brought you to the conclusion today that you are putting out 10 million proposals for budget consultation. These are referred to in paragraphs 331 and beyond, and this is just a highlight of the information that's included within the appendix and the further information that will be included within the consultation document that will actually be released, and the public consultation will actually start next week on the 21st. I just wanted to highlight finally, Chair, in paragraph 341, which I've just provided some information there on one-off funding as well. And this is just to highlight to the committee that one-off funding is unsustainable. We would never aim to use it to balance our budget, although we do recognise that we have done that in small amounts in previous years. The external auditor, as you are aware, has raised concerns about our use of one-off funding, and has written to the Chief Executive about this, and that letter has been shared with members of the committee and also members of the Audit and Risk Committee previously. And for the purposes of this report, Chair, the letter is actually included within Appendix 3 from the external auditor, and also the response that the Chief Executive has provided back to the external auditor has been included within Appendix 4. So I just wanted to highlight the recommendations to the report, Chair. There are 2 recommendations in the report. One is that the committee approve the financial proposals for next year, that is 2021-22, that will be subject to consultation, and also that they agree that this decision is urgent and therefore not subject to review. I'll hand back to you now, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. Before I open it up to questions and comments from members, I would just like to briefly mention the consultation, and that is obviously as a council, we will endeavour to reach as many people as we can in the borough. Different challenges this time round with our consultation, as we normally have sort of meetings, face-to-face meetings, meetings with community groups, etc. in buildings. Obviously we can't do that because of COVID, but we have found ways around that, and all of the information will be available on our website. We will be contacting people in due course because we really want to get as many views from as many residents and stakeholders as we can. And just a quick fact, so the consultation will open on December the 21st and it will close on January the 22nd. And as I said, information will be there on our website. So thank you for that. I'm just going to take some questions now. I just bear with me so I can see whose hand is up at the minute. Councillor Andrew Hodson, your hand's up.
Yes, thank you, Janette. Just a quick one. Perhaps I might be missing something, but we're talking about the consultation and how urgent it is, and time is the essence. I realise that. But surely if we started on the 21st of December, aren't we going to sort of be in the holiday period? Would it not be better to wait until after the Christmas week and then start it? We're going to miss people, or is it going to be an inconvenience?
Chair, can you come in on that, please?
I can, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Councillor Hodson. Really, we wanted to start the consultation as soon as possible to give the public and the staff as well, and anybody else who is interested in responding to the consultation as much time really as possible to respond. In terms of actually starting it on Monday, I think it does provide an opportunity for members of the public and other relevant parties to take in the consultation document, really have a look through the proposals, and potentially, take some time perhaps over the holidays to consider their feedback. But we really did wanted to maximise the time available for the consultation. If we start in January, it will just take another 10 days, couple of weeks off. And we wanted to give a month, to make sure that the consultation is a lengthy one and that people do have enough time to respond.
I think as well, given that consultation will no longer be in sort of buildings which are dependent on being open that might have been closed over the Christmas period, that's kind of one less impediment, because a lot of it will be online, and of course people are online 24/7 now, aren't they? So hope that answers your question, Andrew.
Yes, that's fine. That's
okay,
fine.
well,
thank you.
Thanks. Phil Gilchrist, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. This is questions at this stage, Chair, but I'm wondering if our Finance Director can confirm that our best assessment of the Local Government Association's view on the settlement is that councils are in the end expected to put their council tax up by up to 5% in order to cover both the precept, the adult care precept, and the usual pressures.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gilchrist. Yes, that's right, Councillor Gilchrist. The referendum limit for council tax is generally 1.99%, so just under 2%. And for 21-22, the government have relaxed that referendum limit and has given the ability for councils to increase council tax by an additional 3%, specifically as an adult social care precept, which means that any funding received from council tax for adult social care for that precept is ring-fenced and will go specifically into offsetting adult social care pressures. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Chair. Jeff, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. Thank you, Chair, for outlining the some of the issues. I think one of the key elements, and this you did some briefings to all members quite early on this year, which I think was very welcome as the figures started to emerge. And there was the specific issue around Section 114 order, which is part of the reason why I think the entire council and certainly this committee supported going for a capitalisation directive. I think that's fair. And I think the other points I would make, I think none of us particularly like council tax going up, obviously, but I think one of the key learnings out of the pandemic, if you will, has been about social care and its interaction with the health service and how important it is. I think we've always viewed it as important at a local authority level, and so I think it is welcome that the government have extended the opportunity for us to increase the amount of resources that go into social care based on the learnings through the pandemic as well. And so I think that's quite a welcome freedom that we are able to put that extra investment in. I think is that fair?
Was that a question, Jeff, or?
It was a question, and it was to Cher, and she's trying to get in, I think.
Sorry. Yes, sorry, Chair. Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Thank you. Sorry, my microphone is showing that I'm muted. Yes, Councillor Green, I think what you're saying is correct. There has been significant funding, significant pressure on adult social care and children's social care, not just as a result of the pandemic. There were significant pressures on them previously, and they have been heightened as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have received significant funding from the government for specifically for the social care pressures as a result of COVID, and also outside of COVID as well. I think just in terms of your question about Section 114, that is something we would always hope to avoid. At all costs. There is still a risk that there may be a potential that I would have to issue a Section 114 notice if the council is able to balance its budget and set a legal budget for next year. And this could be as a result of savings not met and the capitalisation directive not provided by MHCLG at the moment. But as I say, that is always something we would try and hope to avoid. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a question at the end, but I'm not going to ask you to answer it, Chair, around whether it's fair or not to be allowed to increase our council tax for the adult care precept. But I'm not going to expect you to answer that, as I do believe that was a political question. Yvonne, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm probably the one that can answer the political question. And it's undoubtedly there are huge pressures on adult social care as we're getting more and more people who need care and support. And I think that the way that our staff, both within our adult social care staff and our public health staff, have responded in this COVID crisis has been exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And I absolutely want that to go on record. I'm aware in things like the mass testing that's currently being undertaken, that apparently the army, when they left at the end of the first week, were absolutely amazed at the level of organisation in Wirral, that we had 4 test centres up and running. Apparently other authorities within Liverpool City region hadn't even made a start, and the army were so impressed with what we'd managed to achieve in that time, and frankly so am I, and so should this whole committee be. I do hope you are. But it's not just in response to COVID. I think in response to all of the needs that our staff have responded absolutely magnificently. The question about is it fair, having to raise the council tax is unfortunate, I would suggest, whilst we await a very, very long awaited review of adult social care. Everyone recognises that this is essential. Governments, and I say that in plural, governments have been attempting to look at this for probably at least 10 years and promising that it would be resolved and we would find a way to adequately fund adult social care. It hasn't happened yet. Yes, we can raise the precept, and thank goodness we can. This year, and it will help. Undoubtedly it will help, but a wholesale review is needed. I am very, very proud that the committee has managed to put forward savings towards the necessary savings in the way that we have, but still protect all of our services, and in fact look to enhance our services going forward. So I'm very, very pleased about that, and I congratulate the whole of the committee for reaching those decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, I'd also like to put on record not only my thanks to your committee and your chairing of your committee, but all of the committees that have been involved in this process. It's never easy. I did it as Cabinet Member for 3 years, and so I can say from experience this is not an easy process. It's been a different way of doing things this year because of the committee system, and I do believe that members and officers have stepped up to the challenge, and really, really particularly proud of our officers who have dealt with all of the challenges and problems that COVID has presented, as well as the the non-COVID related challenges, such as budgetary pressures. So I'd like to put on record my thanks as well to everybody involved. Chris Carubia, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to, while we're putting things on record, I'd like to add my congratulations to the staff for children's services, because they've done an absolutely stellar job throughout COVID, but also for the teachers and our teaching staff who have kept our schools open throughout the whole of this pandemic. And I know they get they've had a little bit of stick over at the press saying that they wanted to close schools and stuff, but they've done a brilliant job in keeping our schools open. But my question, I have got a question actually for Cher, and I was just wondering if she could give a brief sort of synopsis of what a 114 notice means for the council, for those residents that are watching and may not understand what a 114 notice is. Thank you.
Sure. And also, Cher, if you could maybe expand on whether other councils are currently doing this and the reason why we were not keen to do it at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will try and be brief. Thank you, Councillor Carubia. So a Section 114 notice is where the council is a notice that I have to issue as the Section 151 officer, where the council is unable to set a legal budget for the following year. So it's unable to balance its budget for the following year. That is basically what it is in kind of layman's terms. I issue a notice, I have to notify full council of that, and the consequences of that is that all expenditure would stop except for statutory expenditure and contracts that need to be honoured while work is being done to make savings to ensure that a balanced budget can be presented. What would normally happen is the government would send in the commissioners, and the commissioners would run the council in terms of their finances and the budget for us. This year, so there has been a lot presented in the press about councils potentially not being able to balance their budgets and potentially may having to issue a Section 114 notice. Not many councils have done it, so I think there is only 2 that I know of that have issued formal Section 114 notices in the past, over the past sort of 20 years really, which is Northamptonshire and Croydon. There are other councils which are in a position of having the commissioners in, but as far as I'm aware, they've not, I don't think, issued a notice. The government have said that a Section 114 notice is normally issued in when a council can't balance its budget because of things outside of situations like a pandemic. So a pandemic is not really a position where a Section 114 notice would be issued, because it is a crisis situation and it is an unusual situation. And MHCLG have been very clear to say if any councils are thinking about issuing a Section 114 notice, to actually speak to them, because it is not a normal position. It is not what the Section 114 guidance was actually set up for. So it is underlying ongoing positions as a result of things that have happened within the council in previous years, not specifically to do with the pandemic. However, as I said before, it has been widely reported in the press that a lot of councils are struggling to balance their budget and may not be able to present a balanced budget in future years. And this is why we are saying we are in Section 114 principles, but we are not intending to issue a Section 114 notice, because we are having those discussions with government and we have submitted the capitalisation directive. So I hope that provides the information in simple terms, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Chris, was that okay?
Yes, thank you, Chair. That was brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks for explaining that, because it is really important to, for our residents to see the options that are in front of us, really. I can see that Phil and Yvonne have their hands up. Are they from previously or are they fresh hands? Phil?
That's a fresh hand.
Fresh one. Okay, thank you.
I've been following the developments of other councils, and particularly most recently Nottingham, where the government have had people into Nottingham effectively looking over their shoulder all the time and effectively saying, look, you've got to do this, that and the other. Nobody likes anyone looking over their shoulder. But the power that hasn't been touched on today dates back to the 1999 legislation, where the government of any colour, because that legislation was brought in under the Labour government, expect councils to run things according to best value and economy and efficiency. So whilst we've avoided section 114 so far, thank goodness, there still seem to be powers available to any government to question what we were doing, which is why we have to make a good case to the ministry about what we're trying to achieve in order to salvage things at the present time. That's a question and a comment. So Chair might explain that there are other powers as well, if that's convenient.
Chair? Thanks, Phil.
Yes, Chair, thank you for that. So yes, the Section 114 notice is something that the Finance Director, the Section 151 officer has to issue. As I said before, if I feel, or if the Section 151 feels that a balanced budget is unable to be presented. But you're right. I mean, there will be other instances actually where there may be notifications that the government are seeing, and especially notifications from external audit. And in Croydon, a public interest report was issued by external audit. So these are indications to central government that there is a problem or something not quite right within the individual councils, and the government, it does have its own powers. HM Treasury obviously reports directly to government. It does have its own powers to actually step in and request information from councils, and where the information is not forthcoming or the government does not think it's robust enough, and the government does have powers to actually send the commissioners in themselves, be proactive to do that. And Councillor Gilchrist, you're exactly right. That is what they've done in Nottingham. And the commissioner has gone in there and produced a report for the government on behalf of the government. So yes, there are. I mean, it is, as I say, it does go both ways.
Thank you. Phil, is that okay?
Thanks very much, Chair. It's putting more background on why we have to consult with our residents and do everything we can to salvage our services and run them efficiently. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that as well. I mean, on a personal note, I have been in talks with the government for a few months now, and I have been assured by them that, they won't allow councils who are doing the right thing to fail. And so I do have no reason to think that the government will go back on its assurances there. But yes, we do have to do this. We do have to show the government that we're prepared to look at, these decisions and go out to consult on various budgetary options. I don't see anyone else's hand up at this point. So before I move to approve the recommendations, would anybody else like to speak? No, I don't see anybody that wants to. Phil, your hand's back up.
Yes.
And Jeff. Sorry, Phil and Jeff again.
Originally thought we'd doing questions first, but thank you for that, Chair. As we found, the government says we can spend more, we have more spending power, but actually it's out of residents' pockets, of course. And as Yvonne has said, the excellent work that's been done in adult services and the praise that's been given to Wirral by the Army that has been reported to us. As a community, we've got to look after and care for our elderly people and respond to the crisis in families that they're struggling with, which is where children's services come in. And I wanted to underline, as members have said, what has gone on in the background before we got to this stage, because all the things that are being suggested today are the result of hours of work that we've all undertaken to limit the damage. It's involved discussion, debate and soul searching, and none of this has been easy because we're looking at getting through some lean times. So it's likely, or very likely, the consultation will throw up some, or not like some of the options, ask us to look at some of those again. So we need to look at the concerns that are raised, and I think that's part of the process that we're embarking on. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I don't think there was a question in there, was there, Phil? It was just a really useful comment. So, Jeff, you've got your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Janette. And a bit like Phil, I thought we were doing the questions. Now we're moving to more of a comment around the document. And can I first of all share Yvonne's and your thanks and praise to all our staff and volunteers that have worked throughout the pandemic. It has been tremendous, and also to our residents who, by checking the which I do every day on the app about infections, you can see that our residents are listening and are doing all they can to break the chain of infection. But I think the work that our staff did, and you know, I'm going to pay particular praise to the chief executive who led a lot of this, have done in terms of throughout the pandemic has been truly remarkable, and we all owe a great deal of thanks to him and to everyone who has worked, volunteered, and I know a number of councillors volunteered actually in terms of some of the hubs and so on, and thanks to everyone that's done that. I think in terms of this document, just to share your comments and Phil Gilchrist's comments about the amount of work and effort that's gone into this, in terms of, you know, I think 2, 4, 4.5, 5 hour meetings as we're going through this, and also all the work that the committees have done. People have really worked hard on this and, you know, been prepared to think the unthinkable and do the undoable. But, you know, just in terms of how important the consultation is and how essential it is that people engage with what it is that we're trying to achieve through the consultation. I think that's incredibly important. But again, just to highlight what Cher has said in this report and previously when we've spoken, we are still dealing with imperfect information. So in terms of the external levels of support that we will actually receive through government grant, through other elements that we might receive in terms of the various tranches from COVID funding, the fact that we have received the warning around Section 114, and also from our external auditors in terms of, you know, the level of reserves that we have and their use. I think this is an appropriate document to go out and consult the public with. I think it would be fair to say not a single member of the of PNR was, you know, is keen on some of these elements within here. But given the strictures that you've referred to, I think the important thing is that they are consulted upon, that the public have an opportunity to tell us what they think of these elements within this report. And also, and I think you've made this point previously as well, Janette, is for, you know, to tell us whether there are areas that we haven't looked at that indeed we should. I mean, I'm just conscious, and I've mentioned this before, we have some amazing skills and talents and knowledge in the community. And I do hope that people are prepared to use that skill, knowledge and experience to the benefit of the people of Wirral, really, in terms of coming back towards us with suggestions that we may or may not need to look at subsequently. So, risks, and there are always risks. There will be opportunities, and I think it's important that as many people within Wirral, the Wirral community, Wirral society, actually take the opportunity to contribute and to engage with this consultation, because it is important. We're all invested in it and what we're trying to achieve, and I think it would certainly be helpful. And carrying on that whole spirit of community involvement, community engagement that we've seen throughout the pandemic, people using their skills and experience to assist by making their suggestions about where we might need to look if we are going to operate as efficiently and effectively as we need to, as Cher has pointed out. So if we're in the comment phase, Chair, that would be my comment.
Thank you. Yes, we have entered the comment phase. Thanks, Jeff. So, I mean, I certainly agree, you know, not only we only at the start of this process, but there are many factors, variables that have yet to play out, which means that in no way is the end of the process determined. And it is really important, as Jeff said, for as many residents to get involved as they possibly can. And I am assured, after seeing our comms plan and our consultation document, that we will reach as many people as we need to. So hopefully they do take the opportunity to feed into it. So Jeff, your hand is still up, but I'm assuming it's from when you've just spoken then. I'm looking for any other comments. I don't see anybody else that's got the hand up. Okay. If nobody else would like to speak, so if everyone who wanted to ask questions has done so, and everyone who has made comments has done so, I think we can move to the, I'm happy to move that we approve or accept the recommendations contained within this report. Could I have a seconder, please? Would someone like to second that?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. Is that Paul?
It is, yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. So I'm going to take this on a sense, unless somebody would like to speak out now and say that they don't agree to the recommendations. If nobody does that, I will take it that everyone has agreed to them. And I think that we can take from that, Vicky, that we have assent on that.
Yes, Chair, I think everyone's consenting to that.
Thank you. Okay, so we can agree that the decision is urgent and therefore will not be subject to review given the timescales we have. And if there's no other items on the agenda, no any other business or anything like that, it just leaves me to thank everyone for coming along on a Friday night to tackle this really important issue, to attend tonight's committee meeting. We will be meeting again on Monday to have our usual P&R committee with the business as usual agenda. But thank you all for attendance, and thank you not just for tonight, but for all of your input and participation. As Jeff just said, we have had quite a few marathons over the past few weeks in terms of lengthy meetings, where everyone has remained good-natured and professional, and that's really